The Bella in the Wych Elm murder is real. The killer was never caught, but what if someone knew the truth all along? On 18th of April in 1943, four boys found a woman's skull stuffed inside a hollow wych elm tree in Hagley Wood. She'd been forced into the tree while her body was still warm. Forensic evidence suggests that she may have been alive when they put her in there. Police never identified her. Then messages began appearing scrawled across walls throughout England. Who put Bella in the wych elm? For 70 years, no one could answer, until Eliza Middleton left a deathbed confession that might explain everything. In 1933, 10 years before Bella was found, 13-year-old Eliza had hidden in that same hollow tree, and she wasn't alone in there. At 13 years old, I seemed to have no respite in life. At home, my father drank too much and was the joke of the village. And at school, 3 girls, Cathy, Shirley, and Edwina, took delight in tormenting me. Day in and day out of being told you're a worthless loser leads you to believe just that. I started to think that I was defined as lazy Eliza, and I would never be anything more. On the day that it happened, a brisk day in mid-October, I heard footsteps in the rotting leaves and knew that I was being followed. I readjusted my satchel strap on my shoulder, held together with a mismatch of safety pins, and I prepared to run. Their footsteps increased and they seemed to gain on me, their giggles carried by the chill breeze. I turned slightly enough to see their combination of auburn, blonde, and chestnut hair aglow in the golden light. And I started running knowing that my 2 small shoes allowed for little hesitation. They giggled behind me as I ran. Cathy's voice was the loudest and, as always, the most cruel. "Stop, don't you want to play? You're a loser. Lazy Eliza, a loser. We're going to catch you." The trees blurred past me as I ran, fueled by fear, as I climbed over the no trespass fence and into Hagley Wood. Their giggling increased, and certain that they were close by, but with no more energy to run, I stopped and I scanned the area. And that's when the breeze rustled a bunch of leaves past me, past the age bindings of the wych elm tree. It felt like a sign, and I can't explain any more than that. I honestly felt as though I was meant to climb that tree, and as I scrambled up it, the fact that I was no climber won out, and my foot slipped down into the tree's innards. On seeing the hollow mass within it and hearing the nearing giggles of torment, I made a split decision. I climbed down into the hollow to hide, and I patted around me, realizing that to my horror my satchel had gone. I didn't know when I'd lost it. It was a small space, and within it I felt constricted and fragile. A fear I may break and be forever trapped within the hollow struck my mind, and I seemed unable to shake it away. I seemed to shrivel in on myself, becoming part of the gnarled foundations. I felt a sharp pain in my hand as I pressed it against my surroundings in a desperate attempt to widen the space. A coppery smell tickled my nose, and I realized that I could no longer hear the giggles outside. Instead, I heard whispers coming from somewhere, coming from right next to me, inside the hollow of that tree. A new wave of panic hit me as I realized that I wasn't alone in there. I thought it was Cathy, or one of the other girls, and through the slight cracks, a streak of light illuminated the truth. A woman's pale face with a willowy body, wild golden hair, and her big eyes as green as a cat staring straight at me. And I should have been able to hear her breath and to feel her closeness to me, but it was almost like she wasn't really there at all. And as the giggling and torment carried outside, she put a bony finger to her lips, and then she traced a finger over in the air, as though she was outlining my face. "My sweet child, they will not find you here," she whispered. A gentle smile was forming on her pale face. "I can make them go away for good. You just need to say my name." My breathing seemed to slow until it almost stopped. It was as though the entire world was just a haze, and at its center was this woman. I stared into her big cat eyes and I asked, "What is your name?" And she softly spoke, "Whatever you wish it to be." I mouthed the name Greta after Greta Garbo, an actress I thought was perfect. Perfect, unlike me. Greta's cat-like eyes bore into me as she smiled a knowing smile. I don't know what I did next. I don't remember if it was more or if it was less. I know she didn't speak again. Instead, she seemed to vanish, and I remained there, my panic returning as outside, the giggles seemed to gain on me. I heard pounding fists against the outside of that tree. They'd found me. My broken satchel must have led them right to me. Lazy eye Eliza, we know you're in there. Cathy's laughter boomed. Come out now, else we'll burn you out. I smelt the singed air and my panic returned, clawing at my mind in rabid fear. I thought that they were going to do it, that they were going to burn me alive. Smoke seemed to catch in my throat as I stared at that gap, desperate to leave, but fearing that doing so would lead to an outcome worse than burning alive. Fear pinned me to that spot and caused me to whimper out, Greta, please help me. I listened to their laughter, and I covered my mouth and nose with my cardigan sleeve to try and block out the smoke. And the laughter stopped all at once, and then the screaming began. Girls' screams, the kind only heard in nightmares. I waited until the screams turned to whimpers before I began to climb out of that tree. My arms were shaking and I struggled to grip the branches. I saw what looked like blood color a browning leaf, and then I noticed this deep cut in my palm that I must have done in the hollow. Now I saw it, and that's when I felt the ebbing pain. I jumped down onto my feet, and my heart was frantic with fear that the screams and the smoke, they were all a trick to lure me there. And those lingering notes of burning itched at my nose, and looking down, I saw a loose branch of the wych elm. Smoke was emitting from its jagged-tipped leaves. They must have lit it to try and coax me out. It had all been a trick. I couldn't see them, but I could hear the whimpers. Whimpers that I no longer believed were true. And I started to hurry, knowing that I must leave before they found me. And I saw the strap of my satchel out of the corner of my eye, caked in mud and trailing out of the thorn bush that coiled around the edge of the wych elm. I used a stick to try and pull it free, but then as I yanked at that strap, causing my satchel to tumble onto the ground, I saw the horror there, buried in the bush. Cathy. She had bloody scratches covering her face and arms, and her limbs were twisted in unnatural angles. Thorns pierced her lips and the side of her face, and crumbled leaves stuck to her open eyes. She was gripping something in her hand. I had to squint to see the box of something, a matchbox, coiled to her with wych elm leaves. I stayed still and I listened, daring to believe that it was one of her tricks, but knowing that she would not have put herself at such peril in her bid just to torment me. The whimper, it was hers, a faint call for help. I reached out to try and do something to somehow untwist her broken body. I pulled on her gnarled wrist. I told her it would be okay, but as I tried to pull her free, her whimpers loudened, and then the thorns began to fold in on themselves, folding in on my arm and tearing at my skin as I flinched it away, entombing Cathy within them. I staggered backward, tumbling over my own feet and falling into dirt and leaves. I pulled myself to my feet, and I stared at that thorn bush. I couldn't hear her whimpering anymore, and I couldn't see her. The tears stung my eyes, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't like Cathy, but I also didn't want that to happen to her. And I heard footsteps behind me, and the snapping of a twig. I turned, and I saw Shirley and Edwina standing there and twitching, like frightened little rabbits. Their thorn-spiked clothes soaked in blood that wasn't their own, and looks of pure horror in their eyes. They ran, and I ran too. My muddy, broken satchel stuck to my skin as I hurried out of Hagley Wood. I never uttered a word about that thorn bush. Who would have believed me back then? A 13-year-old girl from a troubled family. Cathy's friends never spoke of it either. and a trance seemed to cover the village. Although at first the villagers mentioned Cathy's disappearance in passing, this soon faded away until no one ever spoke of it. Her name was a haze that seemed familiar to many but didn't quite seem to fit. Cathy's family moved away the following month. As for her friends, they never bothered me much again. I saw the knowing in their eyes, but I also saw the fear. Shirley died young from sickness, and Edwina left the village a few years later, and I never knew what became of her. For years, I thought I saw Greta out of the corner of my lazy eye, or in the reflection of my mirror, willowy, pale-faced, and striking cat-green eyes. Then I'd hear her soft whisper, "I told you I'd make them go away for good." And I always felt her presence close by, weakening over time and then growing stronger again. I started to believe that I'd imagined it all, that Cathy was never real, that I made Greta up while I was in that hollow so I didn't feel so alone. But that didn't make any sense. I know what I saw. I just didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe what it could really mean. 10 years later, when they discovered that woman's body in the Wych Elm, I felt it in my bones. I knew what this meant. I felt the lingering whispers in the air, and I saw cat-green eyes in my own reflection. I believe that Greta was behind it. Maybe she lured that woman there and took her life because she wouldn't give her what she wanted, because she wouldn't give her a name. Maybe she drained the life from her because she did. I don't know. It's all just a feeling that intensified when the graffiti started appearing all over the area. Who put Bella in the Wych Elm? Who put Bella in the Wych Elm? Could the message have been deciphered wrong? Perhaps they were never referring to the poor woman whose remains were found there, but the ghostly woman with the cat-like eyes whose name was whatever I wanted it to be. Did someone else climb into that hollow and unleash this bloodshed? Or was this bloodshed because of me? I can't know for sure. Time only brings with it more questions, not answers. But now, as I stare at the outline of Hagley Wood, I wonder, as I often do, why was she ever there in the first place? And who put Greta in the Wych Elm? Eliza Middleton lived out her whole life in the village of Hagley, and in that time she never dared set foot back into Hagley Wood. She never married or had a family through fear of losing them. She passed away in 2003, and on her deathbed, she handed her carer a dictaphone with her confession about what happened in Hagley Wood when she was just 13. There are few reports on Cathy Warrens, other than she went missing in 1933 and was never found. Shirley died from influenza a year later, and records show that Edwina, who left home aged 15, drowned soon after. The identity of the woman found in the hollow of the Wych Elm remains a mystery, but still to this day, from time to time, graffiti appears in out-of-reach places, as though someone or something is trying to remind people of something far bigger than they are, a warning sign that they can't help but notice. For more scary horror stories, please share and subscribe.